Almost a year ago, I made a video about a really bad algorithm that had a 10% chance of being right, and insurance companies were using it to deny claims. I wonder if anything's happened since then.
Good evening, I'm Norah O'Donnell, and thank you for joining us as the search intensifies for the gunman who shot and killed United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson in the heart of New York City.
Oh. This is not a politics channel, and I am not going to weigh in on whether or not vigilante justice is okay. But I think at least some of you are interested in the algorithm that they paid someone like me 49 times less than the CEO of United Healthcare to make. Now, for the record, I don't make bad AI tech. And this algorithm was supposedly wrong 90% of the time, which means it was only right 10% of the time. Last time I made a video on this topic, I said that it was probably deliberate because it's really hard to accidentally make an algorithm that is that bad. Now, 1 year later, I have changed my mind. It was definitely deliberate. There's no way that you make a mistake and have an algorithm that's that wrong for an entire year and just leave it alone. This was done on purpose. And they say that this algorithm is proprietary. But when it comes to machine learning, nothing is really all that proprietary. It's all just computer code and math. I did a lot of searching on this topic a year ago before the machination of CEO of United Healthcare, when the information was more publicly available and, less proprietary. And I found enough information that I was able to reproduce their algorithm. And I'm going to show it to you. But first, I need to talk to you a little more about that video that I made a year ago. It was the fourth video that I had ever made. And obviously not all that good.
Would you trust an algorithm with your healthcare decisions? United Healthcare and Humana, two of the biggest health insurance companies in the United States, are in hot water over an algorithm. A lawsuit alleges that these insurance companies use an algorithm for a, quote, fraudulent scheme.
Now, in addition to being the fourth video that I had ever made, it was the first video that I had ever made with the help of a coach from vidIQ. I happen to know that a lot of you who watch my videos have a channel because I'm using vidIQ's free plugin and it shows your follower count. And I know that some of you need help with your channels because you're just not getting the traction that you want. You know who you are. So I wanted to introduce vidIQ to you so that you could consider treating yourself to a one-on-one coach. It's not that expensive. It's only $99 a month. And I feel like I have made an insurmountable amount of progress this year by working one-on-one with a coach. They were kind enough to give me a link that you can use to go to their site. If you sign up, it does help me and support my work. I have become a lot better content creator in this year with the help of vidIQ. So please check out that link in the description. Anyway, back to the algorithm. Here's what we know. It was created by Navy Health, which is owned by United Healthcare. And it's called the NHPredict algorithm. It used supposedly millions of patient records, which I guess if anyone's going to have that many patient records, it would probably be the insurance company. And they used those millions of patient records to try to analyze the data and predict the amount of time a patient would need rehabilitation or other services after a hospital stay. They call this post-acute care, and any patient staying longer than the recommended amount of time by the algorithm would get the claim denied. And it bases this off of a few things. You have the diagnosis, the living situation, the age, the gender, the physical function, so, whether or not they use a cane or a walker or a wheelchair or none of the above, the admission date, and whether or not the patient lives in assisted living. It will then generate scores for the patient based on the physical or occupational therapy needs that the algorithm thinks that patient is going to need. Claims and services outside of the prediction are then denied. Doctors and patients are not allowed to question or even get an explanation as to how the algorithm calculated it. Now, just using a predictive AI service is not inherently bad. There are millions of predictive AI algorithms, and most of them are fine. Data scientists will try to at least be 90% accurate. Remember that this algorithm is 90% inaccurate. When it comes to more important things like, for example, people's healthcare, we would want to be 95 to 99% accurate. So predictive AI is either a supervised machine learning algorithm or it could be a neural network. I built both, and it took a lot of work for me to get these algorithms to be bad, like the one that United Healthcare is alleged to be using. So let's look at them. And I started with supervised learning to predict the hospital stay. You can see that I put in the functions for each variable that the Navy Health NH predict algorithm uses. And we can go through and test the accuracy of just a basic supervised machine learning model on the data set. And I included all the code for you on that, and we can see that it is actually pretty damn accurate. This is a normal distribution, roughly. This is about what we would want to see with data related to humans like this. Now, that's not good enough if you're United Healthcare and want to deny claims, so let's make it bad. Let's make the data bad. I had to go through a lot of work to do that. Basically, I had to do bad data science and bad math in order to get it. So you can see I greatly just increased the distribution of hospital stays. I added completely nonsensical adjustments to the data by using the sinusoidal age effect and just random huge jumps in data that wouldn't exist in what you would expect from healthcare data. And then I made things worse based on completely irrelevant factors that usually wouldn't matter for an algorithm like this, like gender. That should not determine how long you would stay in the hospital. And I added some random doubling and halving and just several different variations based on the admission date. I made sure there's no negative values. You can't have, obviously, negative hospital stays, but I allowed for ridiculously high values under 100 because I do want to keep it somewhat, believable. If we're going to commit fraud, we have to make it believable. And I added some impossible, decimal places here. And then I added a terrible length of stay to our data set to pull the mean and median to a weird way. You can do that by simply adding a 0 somewhere where it doesn't belong, for example, by mistake or on purpose. And then I went and just made it as bad as could be by adding falls, adding even more confusing random crap to the data set. I added a weird split ratio to the data. You would not usually split data into test and training groups like this, but let's do it. And then I created and trained the model with completely bad parameters here. And this is what we got. This is the distribution. You can see that does not look like data that would be related in any way to human beings. So as you can see, I had to completely destroy the data set. I don't think this legally counts as fraud, but it should. So we can move on to the neural net now. I started in the notebook with one that was bad, just to kind of go with the same way that process we did before. I created intentionally bad feature approximations. I did bad conversions to 12 months. I did bad categorical classifications, and I split the data with a weird ratio again. You would not split the data into test and training sets like that. That's the same way that we did with the supervised machine learning model. And then I deliberately made a bad neural network. I used Excessive dropout, that's a technical term, and I used the wrong functions for the activation layers. Basically, it's like when you're trying to use a math equation to say like 6 times 6 equals 36, but instead of saying times, you say divided by or plus. That's what I essentially did here by using the wrong functions. And then I used inappropriate settings to compile the neural network. I did not train the model correctly. You would not use 3 epochs, you would use a lot more than that, and I used an excessive batch size, which is way too big for this model. And with all of that play in the neural network, creating a really awful neural network, I was, again, able to get results that resemble what United Healthcare's algorithm is alleged to be like. In fact, mine was even a little worse than what theirs is. And if we made a good neural network, I did include that. Using a neural network the way it's supposed to be used, the way that any data scientist who is competent at their job would build one, we actually got pretty good results with that data. And you can see all this stuff here is the epochs. That's how many you're supposed to have when you train a model. In this particular case, the supervised machine learning model was actually slightly better than the neural network, which is fine. You can use either one. Whatever one's the best, that's what you should use. Now, United Healthcare has not been forced to release their algorithm, so we can't say definitively that they definitely hired somebody like me to make something that was bad. But the evidence is sure compelling, isn't it? Now let me ask you this. If somebody like me deliberately made this algorithm to be trash, that affects people's lives. People died because of how bad this algorithm is. If somebody did that on purpose, should they be held legally responsible for those deaths? Let me know what you think in the comments. My versions of that NHPredict algorithm are both downloadable in the description, right underneath that link to join vidIQ. Hey, dog, no messing with my lights.